Hi there. Do you want to make a brooch but you're not sure how? Well, today we're looking at how to make a wire brooch, like this one, but don't get distracted by the design, it's the mechanics that are important. And if you want to see more techniques and tutorials like this one, hit that subscribe button. Now let's broach the subject of brooches. A few weeks ago I got a comment from Jane Thomas, hi Jane, about shawl pins made from copper. Now there are several ways of making shawl pins and brooches, this is just one of them. I'm not sure if this is what you had in mind, but I hope it helps. To make this you need your wire, and I'm using 1.6mm diameter copper, which is 14 gauge. This is because I want a solid pin and copper's quite soft, so having the thicker gauge wire will just help keep that pin quite solid. But you could experiment with narrower gauges if you wanted. And then you also need your embellishment. I'm keeping this brooch quite simple, so I'm using a glass bead that'll fit on the wire. But you could make a brooch that does some wire weaving, you can make loops on it and hang beads on head pins. You can basically add whatever you like to make the design that you want. And then the tools you need are your hammers and block. I'm using a selection of hammers, but you can use whichever ones you've got. A file, bail making pliers, flat nose pliers, wire cutters, and you might also want to use your polishing tools at the end. So I'm going to start with 20cm of wire, although I'd suggest using a bit more if you want a fancier design on the front. And I'm going to start by making the pin, so I want a point at one end of the wire. To do this I'm going to use the hammer. And I'm just working from the end to thin it down. Now you could just file it to create this point, or if you didn't want to taper on the wire you could just round off that wire end. But as well as shaping the wire, I'm using the hammer to work harden it, and that will create that nice solid pin. Once I've got the taper that I want at the end, I'm going to carry on along the length that I want the pin. Again, that's just hardening up that wire to make sure it's nice and solid. I'm using a mallet to preserve the shape of that round wire. And then once I'm happy that the pin's nice and solid, I'm going to finesse the taper a bit by filing. This just takes out the residual marks with the hammering, make sure there's no burrs on the end of that pin to catch, and you can create a finer point if you want it. We now need to decide what length we want that pin. I think I'm going to go for about 5cm. Which is around 2 inches. And then I'm going to take my bail making pliers and curve that wire right the way round. And we're looking to create a spring to help the brooch to open. So we'll just coil this around, and I'm just going to go around 1.5 times. I'll close this up a bit more to finish the pin, but it's useful to keep it at 90 degrees at the moment to help give us access whilst we're creating our design. So we've finished the pin itself and we're now ready to create our design. I'm keeping this fairly simple, but you can make whatever design you want with this bit of wire, as long as you've got a little bit left at the end to create the catch. So I'm going to make a swirl, and I'm just going to start by bending that wire downwards and curving it around. I'm just going to use my small flat nose pliers to help with the grip for this. But you could curve it around your round nose pliers or bail making pliers if that's the shape that you want. And then I want to bend that wire back. Just keep working on it until you get the shape that you want. And I'll just check what it looks like with the bead on it. Yep, I'm quite happy with that. But I think I'm going to use the hammer to shape this wire a little bit more, particularly to widen out that curve. So I'm just going to go in with my hammer and forge this wire where I want. And you can see how leaving the pin at 90 degrees has helped with the access to the back of the design. Now, even if you didn't want to forge and shape the wire, you might want to hammer it anyway, just to harden it up so it's not going to bend. And it's quite difficult to get into these spaces, so I'll swap to my small riveting hammer. And I'm quite happy with that shape, but I think I'll texture the front. So I'll move my block to the edge of the bench. And then use my ball peen hammer just to create a bit of texture on the front of the brooch. And we've got a nice hammered texture on the wire. So now we've done the work to create that design, I'm going to close the pin up a bit more. So I'll put my bail making pliers back in. I'll just adjust that coil to make sure it's straight. And then bend the wire to close that pin a bit more. I think that should be quite enough. I can close it, but there's enough of a spring on there to help get it open again. And then I can pop the bead on. Decide where I want that to sit. And then we're ready to make the catch to finish this off. Now we just need a simple hook as a catch for that pin to go into. I've got quite a bit of wire here, so I'll just trim that down. And then using my flat nose pliers, I'll bend that wire to the back. I'm then going to use the smallest step on my bail making pliers to create a little hook. And I've still got a bit too much wire there, so I'll trim that off. Then I just need to file that wire end so there aren't any burrs. You can also polish up the brooch, which I won't show in this video, but will help to work harden the wire a little bit more if you need it. And then we can test to make sure that the pin will sit nicely in that hook. And our brooch is finished. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, hit that like button below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and head over to my website for more hints, tips and projects. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.